I found out my sister was getting married through Facebook. There it was, a glowing photo of her hand with a diamond the size of a grape, captioned, "He finally asked." Hundreds of likes, congratulatory comments, and among them, my mother's message. "My baby girl deserves the world." No text to me, no call, nothing. I stared at the screen, unsure how to feel. It wasn't just that I wasn't told. It was the fact that I wasn't surprised. You see, in my family, I'm the shadow. The one who fixes things, helps move boxes, drives people to the airport. But I'm never invited to sit down, never really included. I'm Jimmy, 36, mechanic by necessity, not choice. I work freelance during the day and do shifts at the warehouse on weekends. I rent a small apartment above an old grocery store. It smells like onions and the hallway light's been broken for 2 years. But it's mine. Growing up, it was always about Claire, my little sister. Bright, beautiful, and natural at everything. She played piano at 5, won science fairs at 10, and by 16, had my mom wrapped around her perfectly manicured finger. My role? Background support. I fixed the pipes when Dad left. Paid for Claire's school trip when Mom's card declined. Never asked for thanks, just did what needed to be done. So no, I wasn't surprised I found out about the wedding like everyone else. What stung was how normal it felt to be forgotten. But I wasn't angry. Not really, not yet. I closed my laptop and sat back listening to the creak of my old chair. Then I picked up my phone and sent Claire a message. Just one line. "Congrats, let me know if you need anything." She replied the next morning. A heart emoji. That was it. I should have stopped caring right then. But I didn't. Because no matter how distant we were, she was still my sister. And I remembered the little girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during car rides. The kid who cried when I left for work my first day at the garage. Somewhere under the layers of pride and forgetfulness, I still believed she loved me, even if she didn't show it. A week later, my mom called, not to talk about the wedding, not even to ask how I was. She needed a ride to a dress fitting. I said yes. As we drove, she talked non-stop about floral arrangements and color palettes. Never once asked if I was coming to the wedding. Never mentioned my name among the people who've been so helpful. I nodded, smiled, kept my eyes on the road. But inside, something tightened. And yet, I didn't stop. I kept helping. Quietly. I started following the updates online. Claire had created a wedding website with a countdown timer and photo gallery. No mention of me. But I noticed the venue, an upscale garden estate 30 miles out. Expensive. The kind of place that didn't come with free champagne and folding chairs. Out of curiosity, I looked up their rates. Then I looked at Claire's fiancé's job, mid-level IT, not exactly rolling in cash. And Mom? She worked part-time at a boutique, always complaining about rent. I didn't know how they were going to pull it off, but I knew one thing. Claire wouldn't let anything be less than perfect. And if money became a problem, they'd stress, argue, maybe even cancel. I didn't want that for her. Even if I wasn't part of her plans, I didn't want her to worry. That night I sat on the edge of my bed counting bills. I had a little saved, nothing impressive. Just enough for emergencies. But what was more important than this? Love doesn't always look like hugs and holiday cards. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it's showing up quietly while others forget you. And sometimes it's paying for a wedding that no one invited you to. But before I tell you what happened, what the wedding planner did that changed everything, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you believe that even the quietest people deserve to be seen. Because what comes next? No one saw it coming. I offered to help. I really did. Claire was at Mum's house, surrounded by fabric swatches and open notebooks. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Hey," I said, "need anything?" She blinked at me, then glanced at Mum. "We've got it handled." It wasn't rude, exactly, just final. Mum nodded without lifting her eyes from a page full of circled flower types. "Thanks, Jimmy. Maybe just help us move a few boxes later." I stood there for a second, unsure whether to sit or leave. I chose to stand, safer that way. They went back to planning like I wasn't even there. I'd seen this before. Claire in control, Mom echoing every opinion, their little orbits spinning tightly together. There was no room for anyone else, especially not me. Still, I lingered a while, pretending to care about vase sizes and guest lists, just to feel nearby, just to be in the room. But as the weeks passed, the distance widened. Every time I offered help, picking up decor, calling vendors, transporting chairs, I got the same polite dismissal. No need. We've got it. It's taken care of. It was like they were building something beautiful, and I was the guy keeping dust off the sidewalk outside. They weren't cruel, just careless, the kind of carelessness that stings more than outright rejection. One day I overheard Mom on the phone with Claire. I had stopped by to drop off some tools and she didn't realize I was in the hallway. "Don't worry about it, honey," she said. "We'll just take out another loan if we need to." I froze. They were already stretched thin. Claire's fiancé, Matthew, was working overtime and Mom's credit was shaky at best. I'd seen her eyes dodge the cashier at the pharmacy more than once, and now they were talking about loans for one day. I drove home that night gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, not from anger, from frustration. How had they not even thought to ask me? I wasn't rich, far from it, but I could have helped, even a little. Instead, they'd rather risk debt than let me in. That's when it hit me. Maybe they didn't believe I had anything to give. Maybe I'd spent so many years in the background that they truly thought I was just background. I got home, heated up leftovers, and sat staring at my wallet on the kitchen table. There wasn't much in my account, but I'd been careful. No vacations, no splurges, just small deposits over years. I had enough to help without sinking myself, but if I offered directly, they'd say no, or worse, act grateful for a moment, then forget it happened. No. If I was going to do this, it would be on my terms. The next morning, I called the wedding venue. The woman on the line, Grace, was calm, professional. She told me the balance remaining. I swallowed hard. It was more than I expected, a lot more. I hesitated. Then I said, "I'll cover the next payment, anonymously, please." She paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes, but no one can know. I mean it." I could almost hear her eyebrows rise, but she said, "Understood. I'll mark it as settled and update the file." That was the first payment. Over the next few weeks, I found ways to stay informed without making it obvious. Every time I saw something strain their budget, a new vendor, a last-minute change, a sigh from Claire about cutting the cake size, I'd find out who to contact and pay what I could. I never told anyone. Not even my best friend. Not even the guys at work. Instead, I skipped lunch to save money, took extra shifts, postponed fixing the AC in my apartment even when the heat became unbearable. I lived on cheap coffee and peanut butter for a month. Every time I thought about backing out, I remembered the way Claire used to light up as a kid. I remembered her birthday parties, how I'd help blow balloons at midnight so she'd wake up to colors in the living room. She never knew I was the one who cleaned up after everyone left. Some things never change, and maybe that was okay. Maybe I didn't need a thank you. Maybe being invisible was my role and I'd made peace with it. But even peace leaves a bruise. And this bruise was starting to deepen. The first time I handed Grace the envelope, she looked me straight in the eye. "You're sure about this?" she asked again. I nodded. "Just don't tell them, please." She tilted her head, curious. "You don't want credit?" "No," I said. "That's the point." She didn't press further, just tucked the payment into her files and gave a quiet nod. Grace Wilcox was different. Organized, patient, calm, even when chaos brewed. She coordinated everything with elegance, not arrogance. I liked that about her. Maybe that's why I kept coming back to her office. It felt like the one place where I wasn't being dismissed, even if I was still hiding. Every time a bill popped up, I covered what I could. Table rentals, extra lights for the garden, even the overpriced monogrammed napkins Claire just had to have. Each time, Grace would glance at me, always with that same question in her eyes, but she never asked it out loud again. Once she said, "You've got a generous heart, Jimmy." I shrugged. Not really, just trying to make sure she's happy. You ever think she'd want to know? No, she'd feel guilty, or worse, obligated. Grace sighed, but she honored my request. The weeks passed and the costs grew. Every time I thought they couldn't possibly add anything else, they did. A chocolate fountain, an ice sculpture, personalized dance floor decals. Claire had fallen into the Pinterest rabbit hole, and no one was stopping her. I kept expecting someone, Matthew maybe, to push back, but he just went along with it, quietly swiping cards and nodding. Part of me respected it. He clearly loved her, but another part wondered if he too believed I had nothing to offer. Still, I showed up, quietly, consistently. At one point, the DJ invoice came due. It was more than a full week's pay. I stared at the number, did the math, then took a deep breath and transferred the money. The next day, my car wouldn't start. I walked to work for 2 days straight in 90-degree heat. No one asked why I was limping when I got there. I didn't say I ate canned beans and stale crackers for dinner, again. And I reminded myself, this is love, this is loyalty, it doesn't need applause. But some nights that lie was harder to swallow than the food. At work, the guys teased me for looking like death. "You sleeping in that shirt now, Jimmy?" one joked. I laughed with them. Better to be the punchline than the burden. One evening I passed by Mum's house. Claire's car was in the driveway. I stopped to say hi. Through the window I saw them sipping wine, giggling over something on a laptop screen. I raised my hand to knock, then dropped it. They didn't need me. Not really. The next morning, Grace called. "They're adding an espresso bar. It's not cheap." I hesitated. "I know it's a lot," she added. "You don't have to." But I already knew I would. Because the idea of Claire frowning at a last-minute cancellation, of her day being anything less than perfect, was more painful than any overdraft fee. Later that week, I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by receipts. I wasn't broke, not yet. But I was close. I glanced at the fridge. A single orange and a half carton of eggs. My neighbor knocked, asking if I could fix her sink. I grabbed my wrench, smiled, and followed her down the hall. When I came back, I found a bag of groceries at my door. No note, just quiet gratitude. It made me cry. Not because of the food, because someone noticed. And that made all the difference. That night, I lay awake thinking about all the little moments that had brought me here. All the years of being the one who stayed behind, who patched the walls, who picked up the pieces. I didn't regret it, but I did wonder, how long can someone keep giving without being seen? The rehearsal dinner was held at a country club 30 minutes outside town, a place with crisp linens and walls that smelled faintly of lemon oil and polished pride. I wasn't on the official guest list. Grace had texted me the details herself. "Just come," she wrote. "You deserve to be there." I showed up in my only good shirt, a navy button-down that didn't quite hide the fray at the cuffs. I'd ironed it the night before, using a towel on the counter. When I walked in, I didn't expect a red carpet. I didn't need a hero's welcome, but I didn't expect nothing either. Claire spotted me from across the room. She smiled, a flash of teeth and champagne, and waved vaguely in my direction before returning to her conversation. Mum walked past me twice without acknowledging I was even there. Once, I think she mistook me for the valet. I sat near the back, next to the buffet, sipping watered-down soda and watching as people mingled. They laughed, took photos, made speeches. Every name mentioned, friends, cousins, co-workers, was met with applause except mine. At one point, Matthew got up with a mic. "We want to thank the people who made this journey possible. Those who gave time, love, and support. You know who you are." He looked out across the room like he was searching for someone meaningful. His gaze slid right over me. Claire chimed in from her seat. "Seriously, we couldn't have done it without our tribe." The guests cheered. I smiled politely and took a bite of overcooked chicken. I told myself it didn't matter, but it did. I'd paid for the tent outside, for the string quartet playing in the background, for the monogrammed napkins they were using to dab their mouths between compliments, and yet to them, I was invisible. I wasn't asking for praise. I didn't need a standing ovation, but a nod, a glance, a simple "thank you for being here." it would have meant the world. Instead, I sat there, shrinking into my seat, wondering how many people in the room even remembered my name. Later that evening, as guests started to leave, I walked out onto the lawn. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky with soft oranges and golds. Grace found me standing near the edge of the lot, hands in my pockets, eyes on the gravel. "They really don't know, do they?" she asked. I shook my head. "Why would they? I didn't want them to." "Still," she said gently, "it's hard to watch." I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "I'm used to it." She looked at me for a long moment. "That doesn't make it right." I didn't answer. We stood in silence for a while. The air smelled like lavender and tired dreams. Then she said, "You've done more for this wedding than anyone else. Maybe more than all of them combined." I let out a dry laugh. "That's not saying much." Grace stepped a little closer. "Why did you do it, Jimmy?" "Honestly," I hesitated, "because I love her. She's my sister, and I didn't want her to feel like she had to choose between a perfect day and a stable future." She nodded slowly. "Even if it means being forgotten?" "I'm used to being forgettable." "No," she said, firm now. "You're not. They've just never looked closely enough." Her voice was soft but sharp, like silk hiding a blade. "Let me tell them," she said. "Let me say something tomorrow." I shook my head. "Don't." "Why not?" "Because it's her day. I won't hijack that." Grace exhaled, visibly frustrated. "Jimmy, this isn't about stealing her spotlight. It's about giving you the dignity you deserve. I'm fine." She stared at me, lips pressed tight, but she didn't argue. Instead, she said, "Okay. Then let me ask just one thing." I looked at her. "If the moment comes, and I mean really comes, will you trust me?" I didn't know what she meant, but something in her eyes told me she wasn't asking for attention. She was asking for faith. After a moment, I nodded. "All right, one moment." She smiled faintly. "Good." We parted without more words, but her voice stayed with me all night. I woke up before the sun. My apartment was quiet, still, filled with that odd hush that only comes on days that feel heavier than others. I dressed in silence, lacing up the same scuffed black shoes I'd worn to every formal occasion since high school. The morning air was thick with summer heat. I drove to the venue with the windows down, the sky just beginning to warm. No one was there yet when I arrived, just a few birds and the sound of wind brushing against the tall hedges. I got to work. Chairs needed to be realigned. One of the speakers had lost power. A centerpiece had toppled. Hydrangeas and tiny pearls scattered like forgotten blessings. I fixed each thing one by one, unnoticed and unthanked. It felt familiar, comforting in a strange way. By the time guests started arriving, I had already slipped into the background. I wasn't part of the groomsmen, no boutonniere, no matching tie. I took a seat near the back, close enough to see everything, far enough to be invisible. Claire looked beautiful. I'll give her that. Her dress sparkled just enough to catch the light, and the smile on her face when the music swelled and she took her first step down the aisle was the kind of smile you want to remember. The kind that says, "Everything is exactly how I dreamed it." And that made it all worth it. All the extra shifts, all the missed meals. Every moment I felt like a ghost with a wallet. Seeing her beam as she walked toward Matthew, her eyes bright and unburdened, that was the payoff. And yet, even in that moment, I felt a sting. Not because I wanted the spotlight, but because not one person turned to me and said, "You did this." Still, I clapped when they kissed. I cheered with everyone else. I stayed until the last petal was thrown into the air. At the reception, people marveled at the decor. They complimented the food, the music, the ambience. I heard a woman say, "This must have cost a fortune." Someone replied, "Oh, Claire's mum must have taken out a second mortgage." They laughed. I didn't. I stayed useful. Helped a kid find the bathroom, adjusted a table number, quiet things, background things. The sky was beginning to tint with amber when I noticed the generator humming too loud near the back of the venue. I walked over, checked the cables, and realized a fuse was about to blow. If it did, half the lights would go out. I got my tools, worked fast, sweated through my shirt, got it fixed just in time for the band to begin their first set. No one saw. Well, almost no one. As I wiped my hands on a rag, I felt someone watching. Grace. She gave me the smallest nod. That was enough. I slipped back inside, found a glass of water, and took a seat again. I watched the dancing, the cake cutting, the toast from Matthew's brother. All good, all beautiful. Claire glowed like royalty. And for a brief moment, I believed maybe I didn't need more than this. Maybe being unseen was its own kind of honor. Then I saw it, a napkin on the floor. One of the monogrammed ones. I bent down to pick it up, and when I stood again, I saw Claire hugging a woman I didn't recognize. The woman said something like, "You deserve the world, sweetheart." And Claire answered, "I do, and I made this day happen, didn't I?" I froze. 3 steps away, my smile cracked. She didn't say it with malice, just with certainty, with that same entitled confidence she always wore when she knew the room would nod along. I looked around. No one disagreed. No one corrected her. Of course not. To them, she had made it happen. I backed away from the crowd toward the edge of the tent. The noise dulled. My chest felt tight. For a second, I considered just leaving. Slipping out into the dark and letting the night carry on without me. No one would notice, but then I heard a voice behind me. "You good?" "Grace." I turned to her, managed a weak smile. "Yeah, just tired." She studied me. "That moment?" I nodded. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded paper. "The final invoice. I haven't submitted it yet. Want to add your name this time?" I looked at her. "No?" Then after a pause I added, "But I'm not going anywhere either." She smiled. "That's enough for now." Grace found me again by the end of the night, just as the band took their first break and the energy began to shift into something quieter, warmer. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded, following her out to the side of the tent, where the air felt cooler and the music softened into a hum. She held something in her hands, a small binder, the one I'd seen her use to keep track of vendor contacts, deadlines, payments. She opened it, flipped to a marked page. "This is the final ledger," she said. "You covered 62% of the wedding." I blinked. "That much?" She nodded. "It adds up, bit by bit, but yes, it was mostly you." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. She looked at me. "I want to say something tonight." "No." "Jimmy." I said no. She closed the binder, not frustrated, just firm. "Why not?" "Because it's not my day," I said. "It's hers. She wouldn't even be standing here in that dress if it weren't for you." "That's the point. I didn't do it for recognition." Grace crossed her arms. "Then why are you hurting?" I stayed quiet. She took a softer tone. "You didn't ask to be seen, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve to be." My eyes stung unexpectedly. I looked away. She waited. "I just wanted her to have a good day," I said finally. "I didn't need anything in return. I didn't expect to feel this empty either." Grace nodded like she understood too well. "It's not wrong to want to matter." I swallowed hard. "It's just not my place." "But you made this place possible," she said. "You built it with every quiet yes, every transfer, every step you took while they were too busy posing for pictures." I didn't say anything. Then she stepped closer. "You gave her the wedding of her dreams. Let me give you 5 minutes of truth." I looked at her. She wasn't pleading. She was promising. "What are you planning?" "Something simple, a thank you. No names unless you're ready." I hesitated. "Won't that just make things awkward?" "For who?" she asked. "Them, maybe. But not for the ones who need to hear it, and not for you." I looked back toward the glowing tent, the flicker of candles and laughter spilling across white linens. Could I stand it? Could I watch her lift the veil and tell the world that someone else had made this happen? Would she even care? Did I? "I'm not trying to embarrass anyone," I said. "You won't." and I don't want to ruin her night." "You won't," Grace repeated. "You'll remind everyone what real love looks like." I stared at the gravel beneath my feet. My hands were clenched, though I hadn't realized it. Grace waited again. After a long breath, I said, "If it really matters to you, it does. Then do what you think is right." Her eyes softened. "Are you sure?" I nodded once. "I trust you." She smiled then. Not the kind people give out of politeness, but the kind that comes from knowing something important is about to happen. She reached out, squeezed my arm briefly. "Then let me handle the rest." I watched her walk back into the tent, her posture calm, confident, steady. I didn't know what she'd say or when she'd say it, but for the first time all night, I felt like something was shifting, like maybe I wasn't just a shadow moving around the edges. I stood there in the darkness for a few minutes longer, listening to the hum of the music, the sound of clinking glasses, the occasional burst of laughter. And I thought about how many weddings happened every year, how many brothers like me stood quietly off to the side, holding pieces together with duct tape and love never noticed. I thought about all the little sacrifices that build big moments. And I thought, maybe this time one of those stories would be told. Dinner was done, the plates were cleared, the cake reduced to crumbs and frosting smears. Guests leaned back in their chairs, warm with wine and soft music. The golden haze of the evening had settled like a blanket over the room. That's when Grace stepped up to the microphone. She wasn't on the official program. There was a brief flicker of confusion in Claire's expression as she glanced at the planner walking toward the center of the reception area, holding a note card in one hand. Matthew whispered something to her. She nodded, but her eyes were already returning to her guests, to the dozens of faces waiting to be entertained. Grace waited a second for the murmur of conversation to die down. Then she smiled, calm and confident, and began. "As many of you know," she said, "my name is Grace Wilcox. I've had the pleasure of planning Claire and Matthew's wedding these past several months." Polite applause followed. "It's always a joy to bring a couple's vision to life, to help organize the chaos and create something magical." More nods, more smiles. "But tonight," she continued, her voice softening, "I want to take a moment to speak not just about vision, but about foundation." She paused. "Because as beautiful as this day is, and it truly is breathtaking, it didn't just happen because of mood boards or Pinterest dreams." People leaned in. "It happened because someone gave quietly, constantly, not for credit, not for attention, but out of love." The room shifted. Grace's eyes moved gently across the crowd. This wedding, its lights, its music, its elegance, was made possible in large part by a person most of you probably didn't notice today, or yesterday, or ever. My heart thudded in my chest. I wanted to stand, to walk out, to disappear. But my feet wouldn't move. Grace continued. "This person paid for things no one else could, stepped in when the budget fell short, covered what would have caused stress, arguments, maybe even cancellation, and never once asked for anything in return." I felt every gaze in the room shift like wind turning a field of grass. "I was asked not to name names," she said gently, "and I'll respect that wish." Claire was frozen, so was Mom. "But if you're in this room, if you've taken photos, eaten dinner, danced under these lights, you've experienced the generosity of someone whose love speaks without words." Silence. Complete, total silence. Then a chair scraped. Then another. I looked up, and one by one people were standing, clapping, first the band, then a guest. Then a wave of applause that swelled and surged, louder than I expected, louder than I could handle. Someone turned around and looked at me. Then another. Whispers flew like sparks. "Is it him? Wait. Was it Jimmy?" Claire was pale. Matthew stared straight ahead, jaw set. I wanted to shrink, to vanish, but I couldn't, because Grace was still speaking. "This person reminded me why I do what I do. Why love matters most when it's quiet, when it's sacrificial, when it asks for nothing but still gives everything." She stepped back from the mic, and that was it. No spotlight, no name. But everyone knew. Everyone turned to me, and for the first time in my life, the room saw me, truly saw me. It wasn't just awkward, it was overwhelming. The kind of attention I'd never wanted, never dreamed of receiving. I stood slowly. Someone clapped louder. Another guest raised their glass. I shook my head gently, trying to deflect. But then a man I didn't know, a friend of Matthew's, I think, approached and offered his hand. "Thank you," he said. His voice was sincere. A woman nearby nodded, tears in her eyes. "What you did? It's rare." The applause didn't stop, and I stood there in the center of a moment I never asked for, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Not pride, not relief, just release. A weight lifting. Years of being dismissed, overlooked, forgotten, suddenly cracked open by one act of courage from a woman who had watched, listened, and decided I was worth more than silence. I met Grace's eyes from across the room. She gave me a small nod, and I nodded back. At first, no one said anything. After the applause faded, a hush settled again. Not the soft, warm silence from before, but the kind that crackles, uncomfortable and sharp. Claire was staring at me. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She blinked like she wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. Like the pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed were suddenly shifting into place. Mom looked from Grace to me, then back again. Her hands were clenched in her lap. I could tell she was trying to process it all. I wasn't sure if it was pride, shame, or both that flickered across her face. Matthew was stone still. The tension clung to the air like thick fog. I took a step back, trying to ease the pressure. I didn't want to be the center of anything, not tonight, not ever. Then Claire stood. She didn't run to me. She didn't cry. She walked slowly, carefully, heels clicking across the polished floor, until she stood just a few feet in front of me. "Was that about you?" she asked quietly. I didn't know how to answer. I nodded once. Her lips parted again, but nothing came out. Then finally, soft, raw, she said, "Why?" The question hit harder than I expected, because I had asked myself the same thing so many times. During the late nights, the overdraft warnings, the skipped meals, why? But standing there, looking into her eyes, I realized something. I hadn't done it because she deserved it. I'd done it because I did. Because being kind, giving, loyal, those were the things that made me me, whether she saw them or not. Still, I answered simply, "You're my sister." She looked down, then back at me. Her eyes were glossy now. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I know. I should have." I didn't respond. Around us, the room held its breath. Then Claire stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't graceful. Her arm caught awkwardly on my shoulder, and we nearly bumped heads. But it was real, warm, longer than expected. When she pulled back, she wiped her cheek and gave a small laugh. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Show up, when no one even thinks to ask." I shrugged. "Old habit." She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes in a long time, maybe ever. Recognition. Matthew came up next. His expression was cautious but steady. He extended a hand. I didn't know either. I shook his hand. "It's okay," I said. "You weren't supposed to." He nodded. "Still, thank you for everything, really." We stood there awkwardly for a moment, unsure what came next. Then Mom approached. I braced myself. She didn't say anything right away, just looked at me. Her eyes were unreadable. Then she touched my arm. "I'm sorry," she said softly. It was all she said, but it was enough. Not everything was forgiven. Not yet. But something cracked. Something shifted. A few more people came over, neighbors, relatives, a couple of Claire's friends. They offered kind words, warm gestures, little acknowledgements I never thought I'd receive. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the background. I was part of the picture. I sat back down eventually, trying to breathe through it all. Grace passed by and gave me a look. Not smug, not proud, just steady, like she'd known the moment would land exactly where it needed to. The rest of the evening moved on. The music resumed. Dancing resumed. People laughed again. But something had changed. There was a softness now, a quiet attentiveness. People looked at me like they saw me. And I wasn't sure I knew what to do with that. It was strange, being seen after so long in the dark. Strange, but not unwelcome. When the band played their final song, I watched Claire and Matthew dance under the fairy lights. She looked over her shoulder and gave me a small smile. I smiled back. For the first time in my life, it felt like we were siblings again. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages, some from people I barely knew, old classmates, distant cousins, others from guests at the wedding, sending kind words, awkward apologies, or simple lines like, "Didn't realize, thank you." I answered the ones that felt honest, left the rest unread. It wasn't about basking in it. It was just different, to be acknowledged, to have people stop and reconsider who I was, not based on assumptions, but on actions. Claire called around noon. "Hey," she said. Her voice was quieter than usual. "Hey, can I come by?" I paused. "Yeah, of course." When she showed up, she had a paper bag of donuts and 2 iced coffees. No grand gestures, no flowers. Just her. She handed me the coffee and sat on my beat-up couch without asking. For a few minutes we didn't talk. We just drank and listened to the hum of the ceiling fan. Then she said, "I don't know where to start." I gave her time. "I keep thinking about all the moments I didn't see you," she continued. "All the times I brushed past you like you weren't there. You had a lot going on. That's not an excuse." I took a sip. "It's life." She turned toward me. "But it doesn't have to be. I don't want to be that kind of person anymore." I believed her, not because of her words, but because of the way she was sitting beside me. Real, unarmored. "I'm sorry," she said again. "For making you invisible," I nodded. "Thanks." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "I know you probably don't want this, but I talked to Matthew and we want to pay you back. Even just a little." I shook my head. "Don't." "Jimmy, you paid me back already." She blinked. "How?" "You saw me. That's all I ever wanted." She didn't cry. Neither did I. But the silence that followed was thick with everything we didn't need to say anymore. Later we talked about simpler things, movies we hadn't watched, neighbors we remembered, the way Mom still hides cookies in the top cabinet like we're kids. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like we were walking on history. It felt like we were writing something new. A few days later, I got a text from Matthew. "Mind grabbing a beer sometime this week? I owe you one, maybe more." I replied, "Sure, first round's on you." He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. I didn't expect us to become best friends overnight, but it was a start. And starts matter. That weekend, I went to the gas station near my apartment. The clerk handed me my change, then said, "Hey, were you at that wedding last Saturday?" "Yeah," he nodded. "Someone said you helped put the whole thing together. That's cool, man." It caught me off guard, but I smiled. "Thanks." Even small acknowledgements felt like rain after drought. Everywhere I went, people seemed to look twice, not with awe, just with recognition. That was enough. Even my landlord, gruff and always late fixing the plumbing, stopped me in the hallway. "Heard you're the guy who made that Wilcox wedding shine," he said. "Didn't figure you for the romantic type." "I'm full of surprises," he chuckled. "Guess I owe you one." "Nah," I said, smiling. "Just fix the hallway light." 2 days later, it worked for the first time in 2 years. At work, my manager bumped me up to lead on the next major job, said he appreciated quiet reliability. I'd never heard that phrase before, but I liked it. One night, I was locking up the garage when Grace showed up. She didn't say much, just handed me a card and a brown envelope. "Don't worry, it's not a bill," she said with a smirk. Inside was a handwritten note. "Jimmy, thank you for reminding me why I love this job. Some people plan events, others make them matter. You did both. Grace. And beneath it, a gift certificate for dinner. Not fancy, just thoughtful. I figure you could use a meal that isn't from a gas station," she said. I laughed. "You're not wrong." She started to leave, then paused. You ever think about doing this kind of thing full-time? Weddings? Not exactly, just helping people get it right. I thought about it, then said, maybe. And I meant it, because for the first time, I wasn't just fixing what was broken. I was building something. The morning after the wedding, I woke up early, not from restlessness, but from a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. Sunlight trickled through the worn blinds, tracing gentle patterns across my bedroom walls. Everything felt softer, quieter, clearer. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, looking out the window at the sleepy town slowly stirring awake. The weight I had carried for months was gone. It wasn't replaced by glory or pride, but something simpler. Peace. My phone buzzed. Grace again. I hope you slept well, you deserve it. I smiled, typing a quick reply. Best sleep in years, thank you. She answered immediately. You did this, Jimmy. I was just your microphone. Her words lingered. It wasn't just about the applause or recognition. It was about finally understanding my own worth. I didn't need to hide behind anonymity anymore. Mid-morning, Claire texted again. Lunch today? On me. Promise no drama. I replied with a thumbs up. Baby steps were fine with me. We met at a diner on the edge of town. No frills, just comfort food and familiar booths. Claire ordered pancakes. I got an omelette. We ate slowly, enjoying the silence more than the conversation at first. Then Claire said, I talked to Mum again this morning. I paused. Everything okay? She nodded. Better than okay. We talked about things, important things, about you. I waited. She cried, Jimmy. She feels terrible about everything. She's realizing what she's missed all these years. I shrugged lightly. We all missed things. Maybe, Claire said, but we don't have to keep missing them. She reached across the table, grabbing my hand. I want to fix this. I don't want us going another 5-10 years pretending everything's fine when it isn't. I squeezed her hand. Me neither. After lunch, she hugged me tightly, whispering, Thanks again, for everything, and I mean everything. Any time, I said, genuinely meaning it. Back at home, the rest of my day passed quietly. I tinkered with my truck again, cleaning tools and sorting through piles of leftover wedding receipts. Eventually, I found myself holding the small binder Grace had given me, the ledger showing all the payments I'd quietly made. Flipping through pages of numbers and dates, I realized something. These weren't just bills paid. They were proof of a kind of courage I didn't know I possessed, the courage to love fiercely without expectation. It wasn't the big speeches or grand gestures that mattered most, but the small, silent decisions made when nobody was watching. As evening fell, I decided to visit Mom. I hadn't planned it. I just got in my truck and drove, parking outside her house for a long moment before knocking on the door. She opened it slowly, eyes already softening. Jimmy, she said quietly. I was hoping you'd come. We sat together on the porch swing, saying little at first. But soon stories flowed, old memories, funny moments from childhood, even the painful things we'd avoided for years. Mom apologized more than once, and each apology was a brick lifted from my chest. I don't know how I missed seeing you all these years, she said softly. I took her hand. It's okay. I think I'm finally seeing myself. We stayed there until the stars filled the sky, quietly rebuilding something I'd thought lost forever. That night I lay awake in bed, feeling lighter, freer. My phone lit up once more. Grace again. Ever thought about doing this professionally? Seriously, you have a gift. I smiled. Maybe I did. Let's talk about it, I replied. Deal, she answered immediately. I set the phone aside, feeling an unexpected excitement bloom in my chest. This wasn't just a happy ending, it was a new beginning. And for anyone who's been quietly carrying burdens, invisible to the world, remember, sometimes it only takes one person noticing to change everything. If you've enjoyed this journey, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're ready for more stories that prove quiet courage deserves loud applause, click the next video on your screen. You won't regret it. Because heroes aren't always loud. Sometimes, the bravest ones move quietly in the shadows, waiting patiently until the right person notices. Someone like you,